Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, March 21st, 2016 City Work Session. At this time, I will call the meeting to order. And we have a couple folks that are going to be here tonight. I will let you know that the Chamber of Commerce will not be here. There's family issues in Arizona that she's taking care of, so we'll have her at a later date. So at this time, Craig, I see you're here. We'll get her lit up, and the Watertown Development Company can kind of come in and give us an idea what's going on.
Slideshow. There we go. Well, good afternoon. Craig Atkins. I'm the president of the Watertown Development Company. And we just, first of all, I'd like to let you know that we're thrilled with the opportunity to come in front of you today and talk to you a little bit about some of the things that the Watertown Development Company's been up to. And I've got just a few slides that I'd like to go through to kind of put it in perspective. When this letter was sent to us, and then my subsequent conversations with the mayor, one of the things that he asked that we do is discuss our financial balance, our financial statement. And just to let you know, because of the way that we're structured and organized, we don't release publicly our financial statements, but I will at a very high level kind of touch on some of the financial things that we're involved with and give you kind of a lay of the land in terms of our economic health or our financial health, which right now is extremely strong, which is good news compared to where we were probably 5 or 6 years ago. I will also tell you, and this is an offer, standing offer for any of the council members, that I'd be more than happy on a one-to-one basis to sit down and go through those financial statements. The mayor receives those as a board member on a monthly basis, although he's technically not allowed to share those. And then I believe we file those with Shelley at the City Finance Office when we have loans active, maybe once a year, as well as other lenders. So if you want to talk about an organization that has a lot of sets of a lot of financial experts' eyes on them, ours certainly fit that bill. We, in addition to that, have all the lenders in the state and others that see our financial statements on an annual basis. So just to give you a little overview of the Watertown Development Company, today we have a net worth of about $12.5 million. That includes real estate, buildings, land, and other assets. Our current equity position, so this would be any fixed assets, cash, buildings, and so on right now, is about $6.8 million. A majority of that is real estate. And that's real estate that we have equity in, so our actual value on that real estate obviously is much higher. Our annual operating budget is somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 or $500,000. That fluctuates fairly dramatically because any given year we may have a special project that we're working on where we expend more monies or less monies. And I've got an example of that in a couple of minutes that, if I don't remember, is kind of talking about that, where one year we might do a revamp of some of our marketing materials. The following year we won't, so that expense wouldn't show up. And as most of you know, the Watertown Development Company is funded on a 5-year capital campaign. We're currently in our Focus 4 capital campaign, which runs from 2013 to 2018. So we're about halfway through that campaign. In that last effort, we had established a goal of $2 million, and we raised $2.1 million. Of that, and I see we have a little typo there, please forgive us, but the city provides us with $100,000 annually, which makes up 23% of the total. 33% of our investment come from public funds, city, county, school district. And with every dollar that the city invests in the development company, we're able to leverage an additional $3.2. And the reason I think that's important for you to understand is oftentimes, depending on the campaign cycle, the city's commitment is the first commitment that we reach out to get. And so that obviously helps to set us up for the success in our campaign and or would be challenging if that weren't there. One of the things that we do as part of the 5-year capital campaign is develop a 5-year strategic plan. And this is a really brief summary of what that plan entails. But in that plan, we also have some specific goals as it relates to job creation, workforce development, capital investment, infrastructure improvement, and many other things. And so these are increased business visitation and outreach, aggressively market Watertown nationally and at a regional level, cultivate an accessible, well-trained, and world-class workforce, communications, collaboration, and investor relations. So if there were a special project that we might get involved with, for an example, when we did some work for President Obama's visit, we partnered with the city, the chamber, and the CVB, but the development company and the city actually paid for the materials that were produced for that effort. Planning and development of economic development related infrastructure, which we refer to as things that enhance our industrial parks or facilities and buildings that we currently own. Probably one of the best examples of this is our spec buildings. In the last 3 years, we've built 2 spec buildings, filled one of those very quickly, and finished the last one about a year ago. And have had several inquiries about that building. And then regional collaboration, which is basically our outreach to surrounding communities. This is a philosophical discussion more than anything, but we do set some resources aside for this. And the idea is that it'd be very challenging for us to go to Clark or to Florence or to Henry or one of these other communities and tell them, hey, we've got money, we want you to do economic development. So how our board has kind of positioned that is we have these resources available as communities approach us, because in the smaller communities, it really needs to be their idea or their initiative, and then we'll be more than willing to support that. And I can tell you just recently, we had a meeting with one of our communities just to the east or just to the west of us, and are working with them on trying to help out a business that had some major issues. We also assisted the community of Florence several years ago, as well as the community of Castlewood. Florence was when the Watertown, or when their elevator burnt down. Castlewood was with some infrastructure for a road project. So the question posed to us was, what do we use the city's finances for? What are they put towards? And the reality is we don't specifically dedicate any monies that we receive during our capital campaign to any specific project. That budget I just shared was a pretty good example of the broad categories where all the funds go. And what that does then is helps us to achieve our goals and objectives that we outline in our strategic plan. And for an example, in this 5-year campaign, we have an $80 million capital investment goal. We have 1,000 jobs created or retained. We have the development of a workforce advisory council and providing training assistance for workforce development. So we really do, and then marketing and other issues. So we really do that. But here's an example of what those monies are used for. So in the past 3 years, this is our cumulative prospect inventory, I suppose you could say. In 2013, we worked with 38 companies. We conducted 16 RFIs, so that's a formal written request that we provide to a company. Those prospects, some of them are generated internally, some of them are generated as recommendations by an outside source, and some of them come from site consultants, and a majority of them come from the state of South Dakota through GOED. And that just gives you an idea. 18 hostings. We define hostings as any time a company visits, and one hosting could really equate to multiple visits. So we don't, say that XYZ company was here 5 times and now we have 5 hostings. And then you can just, I'm not going to go through 2014 and 2015. You can see those numbers. We generally do in that 30 to 40 range, so those are pretty consistent. 2015 was a pretty busy year for us. And as a result, in the last 3 years, we've had 129 companies that we've been in communication with. We've conducted 68 RFIs, 53 hostings, and we've completed 25 projects. And when we say that we've completed a project, that means it's either resulted in action, like we've provided some land, we've put together a financial package, or we've helped assist that company with whatever their relocation or expansion needs are. And if you give me the opportunity in a minute, I will go through just some of those to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. In terms of capital investment, since 2013, the Watertown Development Company has been involved in several projects. We've created over $32 million of total capital investments. That's our direct involvement. So for an example, we might talk about the Watertown Rec Center, but that's not a number that we would include here. These are projects where we've actually assisted the company in securing financing, or in some cases, we've provided financing, or we've put together a package where we own real estate for that company to lease and then buy back from us. And so for an example, in the last 3 years, we've generated over $32 million to date in direct economic capital investment. Job creation, just another example of how are we doing and where are we at on our goals. Job creation to date, 225 jobs in 2013. That was a rather large number because we had 2 projects that year that really made a big difference. 160 in 2014, and even though we had all those prospects in 2015, our job numbers were down slightly for a gamut of reasons. Some of those projects we're still working on, some of those will get carried on into 2016. But just for that 3-year total, or roughly halfway through our capital campaign, we're just shy of halfway to our goal of 1,000 new jobs. Some of the projects, and this isn't inclusive, but just to give you kind of a feel for some of the projects that money is used to help support, the expansion of Metrics into our first spec building in the Pheasant Ridge Industrial Park, Dakota Body's expansion of 45,000 square feet and ultimate purchase of the facility that they're in, that the development company used to own. And that's a pretty classic example of how it would work. We built the building, we leased it to them with the idea that someday we would sell it to them, and then we would turn around and use that investment to reinvest in other projects like the spec building. Dakota Tube, this is a classic example of the WDC and city's partnership. The city had some land in the airport, and we've worked with the mayor's office and the mayor and the company to put that land in a position that ultimately it can be transferred to them. In the meantime, the development company owns that building, and we're leasing it back to Dakota Tube. Moffitt, this was a pretty straightforward deal. We authored the Ready Loan application to help them secure their financing. And so they had a majority of the financing in place, but they came to us and said, you know, we're still a little short. What can you do to help us? And that's what we ended up putting together. JMS, Glacial Lakes Rubber, and then wanted to highlight just a couple new businesses. We've had a couple other new businesses, but this is probably one of our larger success stories to date. The new business originally was Spexis, excuse me. And they've already created up to 30 jobs. They feel that that business will grow. They moved into the former Minnesota Rubber Building. And in the meantime, and you don't even know about this is the first time it's been publicly announced, they've added a new company called RVI, which does electronics testing, that is now leasing space in that building. And they have plans to expand that business's operations. And they did that just internally. I mean, they had the space, but it was with our work that we did with the state initially, along with the city and the development company, to come up with the financing for them to buy that building and ultimately create those jobs. And for those of you that were on the council at the time, when we came and presented to you the package, and this is just a rough example of it, one of the things we told you is we're investing in the unknown. We knew that they would commit to 30 jobs. We knew that they would be doing this certain type of work. I think some of you will remember the large rail car we presented that day. But we didn't know what other spin-offs or benefits might be as a result of this company. And it's been a great success to this point with them adding the new business. And ironically, what I should tell you is Kevin Wald, who is the owner, has mentioned to me more than once that he thinks Watertown's workforce is fantastic and that they've had minimal challenges in hiring workforce, which is different than what we've heard in the past, given the current workforce challenges that we're faced with. Marketing initiatives. Many of you remember that as part of the president's visit, we kind of kicked off this new initiative. We took some of our marketing materials and tried to develop a message that all of our partners, the development company, the chamber, the CVB, and the city could talk about during that 2 to 3 week period of time. From that, we developed the Watertown Works platform, and since that time we've taken that on a step further and have now redesigned our website and enhanced our social media capabilities to include the Watertown Works message, which is really Watertown Works for work, Watertown Works for workforce, Watertown Works for a great quality of life. And if you haven't had the opportunity to go out and check our website, I would encourage you to do so. I will tell you just in the short period of time that the Watertown Works Facebook page has been up, we're nearing 3,000 contacts. We've had over 150,000 impressions, which means over 150,000 individuals have accessed that website at one point or another since June of last year. So it's really had a tremendous outreach. And the demographics on that continue to just impress us. As a result of some of that work, Watertown was awarded in 2013 the IEDC Excellence Award, silver for our publication for our marketing materials that we send out to companies and to businesses. And then just this last year in 2015, we received an award from the Mid-American Economic Development Council as it relates to our annual report. And that was one of two that was recognized at that event, which is made up of economic development organizations in the upper Midwest, including 10 states. So it's always nice to hear that, because our peers are looking at our materials and telling us that you guys are doing marketing work and advertising that we're envious of, quite honestly, and so that's always exciting to hear. And then workforce development. 5 years ago, workforce development wasn't really a big part of our strategy. I will tell you now, this takes up probably 20 to 30% of all of our resources. And one of the first things we did is created the Workforce Advisory Council. We were a key stakeholder in the governor's workforce development efforts a little over a year ago. And to this point, we've had 10 to 15 stakeholders that attend those meetings on a regular basis. It's open to any HR professional. And we have over 35 HR professionals that have participated at some level in our Workforce Advisory Council. One of the other programs as it relates to our Workforce Advisory Council is our Attract and Enhance program, which is a very unique program that was funded by the Governor's Office of Economic Development with a $50,000 grant that we as a community had to match. We're using those grant funds to provide training and relocation reimbursements to employees directly. So how that works is a company approaches us, they submit the application, we have to keep the name of the employee confidential, but the Attract and Enhance and the Workforce Advisory Council review that request, and then they can make an award up to $1,000. The caveat to that is that the company has to provide at least $1,000 in matching funds. And so for companies that already do this, and several of them do, where they provide an opportunity for an engineer or a salesperson or an accountant to relocate to our community, and they say as part of that package, we're going to provide you with moving expenses, we will match that up to $1,000. Not a big deal, but it's really taken off, and we've really gotten a lot of interest in it. To date, we have done 14 of those applications, and we're getting our first company-wide application approved in the next months, where we'll actually be doing training for existing employees, but it's going to be company-wide. And so that's going to be a little larger award. That'll probably be about $5,000. But again, they're matching that. And in this case, I think it's a 3-to-1 match that they're offering. So a great opportunity for us to assist businesses in addressing their workforce development challenges. And those are just a couple of things. This group has also worked on the Watertown Manufacturing Week, and we have plans this year to expand that and our efforts as it relates to that program. And then probably the kind of the catch-all area, a lot of the activities that we do are to build capacity. And some examples of that, and I know it's a little bit redundant from what I talked about earlier, but would be the spec buildings, Compesca Capital, which is an angel investor fund that we created as part of this campaign, where we've I think now 18 individual private investors that have each contributed at least $50,000. And the numbers don't quite add up because some of those investment groups are made up of 1 or 2 people. But that fund was set aside to help entrepreneurs. We found that in our last strategic plan and our return on investment that one of the areas that we really didn't have some good resources were our entrepreneurial development. And I need to give a shout out to Don Roby because he helped get that off the ground. Honestly, if it wasn't for his work in getting those folks together, I don't know if we'd have been successful. But that has been a very, very good success, and that company has actually now made an investment in a couple entrepreneurial type projects. And while neither one of those is taking place in Watertown, the hope or the idea is that at some point in the future, components of what they do or parts of their business will be done in Watertown. And one of those investments does have a company in Watertown that's a vendor. So we've already seen some rewards on that. Some of you may be familiar with the Commerce Center. Premier Bank made that donation to the city, and then the city donated that building to the development company, with the caveat that the development company, Chamber of Commerce, and CVB and other nonprofits use that as their home. And I think that building has been a tremendous asset. We spent a little north of $140,000 on the renovation and remodel of that facility. And now we have a third floor that we would also like to renovate in the future. So you may hear us come back and talk to you about that at some point in the future, that we could use as kind of a hybrid incubator co-working space for very small entrepreneurial opportunities. That's been a little more challenging. We've been doing some work on some grants, and it's kind of, you almost need to have the bird in hand before you can make the ask, but you can't make the ask unless you have the bird in hand. So if you follow me on that. And then one of our bigger issues that we've been working on more recently is future industrial park acquisition. As most of you recall, when the city agreed to transfer the land purchased by Glacial Lakes Energy, one of the caveats to that was that we'd set that money aside along with other sales from land transactions that the city and development company work on jointly for future industrial park acquisition. Concurrently, the development company has also set aside a chunk of money that we will use, and the idea is that we will collaboratively come back to you with a proposal to purchase not one but maybe two separate industrial or business park properties that we can use in the future. And this all stems from an analysis we did several years ago, which said at our current absorption rate, we will run out of industrial park and business park property within the next 5 or 10 to 15 years. But if it wasn't for the foresight of city councils and development company board members way back in the 90s and 80s, a lot of the land we have today that is almost full wouldn't have been available. So we may not see immediate return on this, but we would like to start that. And we have had some conversations just recently with a landowner, a representative of a landowner, and within the next week or two, we're hoping that we will have some kind of consensus on purchase price, and then come to the council to discuss how we might split up that cost and how we might develop that property. And I think that's all I have. I wanted to leave a little bit of time. I don't know if I left a lot. I suppose since we're one short, we've got a little extra time.
Yeah, Craig, I'll give them like 5 minutes, and then we'll have to
So,
move on.
yep,
So if
that's
they
fine.
got any easy questions for you.
Craig, the most recent success you guys have experienced has been Faber.
Yes.
Just came in. Now that they're here, what did they tell you? What were the reasons why they said we're going to do Watertown?
Well, kind of a long story, but they really liked this area. They wanted to get into South Dakota. The owners of the company, a couple of them live in Iowa. One of them lives in Sioux Falls. They felt Sioux Falls was too costly for their type of business. And this made sense because not only are they in the implement dealership business, but they also do some assembly of product lines that they would sell either in Watertown or at their other facility in Iowa. And so ultimately it came down to having available land at a price that they felt was competitive. And we didn't provide any special deal for them as it relates to the land value. But it made sense to them, and that location provides them with the access that they want. So it's an example where a lot of times there's a lot of things that we put out on the table. This was more of a facilitation role that we also fill from time to time. So I hope that answers your question.
Craig, I don't have a question, but I've got a comment. Our office, and I'm going to get accused of putting a plug in for our accounting firm, but our office goes way back with the development company, back to its origins practically. And I just want to clarify, it's probably understood, the development company is a nonprofit organization as far as how it's organized under the auspice of the Internal Revenue Service. But there's still occasionally, but that was not always the case. It was originally formed as a for-profit organization, investor-owned, and about 20 years ago thereabouts, the conversion was made to a nonprofit, but occasionally, I know through our office, we'll still get people that will call. They'll be going through mom and dad's papers after they've passed away, and they'll come across these old stock certificates, and they wonder, you know, what's the story with the development company. But I do want to clarify that it is a nonprofit organization, that there is no investors that are reaping any benefits by the actions of what's going on with the development
Right.
company.
Right, and you know, one of the things that our office is very sensitive of is confidentiality. In fact, we've just incorporated a confidentiality policy, code of conduct policy that all of our board members are asked to sign. And there's a couple of reasons why we do that. And one is that it's not to our advantage to necessarily let our competition know what our strengths and weaknesses are financially, but probably more importantly is that we, as part of the interaction we have with clients, provide them with a level of confidentiality until such a point that they want us to talk publicly about that business. So, and in fact, there are state statutes in place that allow economic development organizations to maintain their information in a confidential manner. But as I've said, it's not that we're trying to not share with you what that looks like, and I'm happy to do that. It's just not something that we want to necessarily discuss in a public setting.
You know, Craig, I want to make a couple of quick comments before we're done. You had mentioned other cities, you know, Florence, Castlewood, Henry. I think we also need to understand that some of these businesses that you're talking to have expanded into these other towns, which is good for Watertown, because
Right.
most of those folks, you know, are still coming here and shopping. But one of the other comments I wanted to make was your addition of Michelle. I think that, you know, she was here in front of us and spoke on another occasion, I forget what it was, just a week or so ago. And I think she's a great addition for your organization over there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. We're just like anybody, we have the same challenges when it comes to hiring staff, and we were really fortunate both with her and Tracy to get a couple people that, and we've honestly now got the people in the right roles, and that's made a huge difference in our ability to respond to folks.
Well, thanks, Craig. We sure appreciate you swinging by.
Thank
and
you.
We'll talk to you later and keep it
Sounds
up.
good.
Oh, and by the way, I think Faber took almost like 2 years to get done. You know, it isn't like they call today and they're ready to start building tomorrow.
Yeah, if there was one thing I probably failed to mention today, and I think most of you understand that, is, you know, economic development is a long-term process. I understand the pressure politically to make the next deal happen. And the story I always use is, although this isn't necessarily in our wheelhouse in terms of projects that we work on a regular basis, is when Applebee's announced, I received an email from a young lady at the Technical Institute that said, "Great job on Applebee's, now when are you going to get an Outback?" And so that's the kind of mentality that we have to deal with quite often. There's nothing wrong with it, but it is truly a long-term process. Some of these deals, as Mike Danforth has mentioned before, when the company's ready to pounce, we need to be ready for them. That's why we have the spec building. Other projects takes months, years, or as the mayor said in this case, 2+ years to finally bring together.
Craig, can I ask a quick question? Have we had any looks at the spec building?
Absolutely.
Can you share that with us?
Well, we've, I can't give you an exact number because I don't have it with me today, but we've probably had at least in the last 3 months, probably 4 months, at least a half a dozen inquiries. And we've had 3 companies since the first of the year that have been out to look at it. So, and we're actually in discussions with one of those right now that has come back and said, let's put a package together, tell us how much it's going to cost to finish it. We'd like to either lease or buy that building from you. So it's doing what we told you it would do. But in our world, a prospect a month on a facility like that is kind of batting pretty good. You know, I would love to say that we have people every week, but that's just not realistic.
Okay, thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, next on the line is Julie, oh no, Todd. No, Todd, you're
wanted me
okay.
jumping in.
That's all right. Come on, go ahead, Todd. You're up.
Had me scared there for a minute. I've handed out a couple handouts for you, and so you can look at them at your leisure. But to begin with, my name is Todd Kays, and I'm the Executive Director of the First Planning District in Watertown, South Dakota. And again, as Craig said before, I'm glad for this opportunity to come and talk to you a little bit about the First District, some of the work that we've been doing here in Watertown and in our area. Just a quick synopsis of who the First District is. We are one of 6 regional planning and development districts located in the state of South Dakota. We have sister organizations in Aberdeen, Pierre, Rapid, Sioux Falls, and Yankton. We work in 11 counties and 75 communities in northeastern South Dakota. We were created in 1971 through executive action, so we're a creature of government. We aren't government, but we're created by Governor Frank Farrar back in 1971, and we'll be having our 45th anniversary. We are a membership-based organization. All of those 11 counties and 75 communities belong to the First District. They pay dues into our organization, which I'll talk about that in just a little bit in a minute. That helps perpetuate what we do as an organization. We're governed by a 35-member board, which has 3 representatives from each of our counties. Currently, Kyneton County is represented by Brenda Hanton of the county. Craig Atkins is past chairman of our board and is our at-large member. And currently, we have a vacant spot on our board, which we'll be looking at filling here this summer. We also have the chairman of the Flanders Santee and Assistant Wahpeton tribes as far as membership. Regarding how we're financed, it's been pretty steady for most of the years that I've been associated with the district, but currently 23% of our income comes in the form of dues. And I talked to that all communities with at least a population of 100 and all 11 counties pay dues into our organization. We use those dues to leverage other state and federal grant funds. We also do specific state and federal contract work. So about 51% of our actual operating income comes in the terms of fee-for-service. So our fee-for-service work that we provide for technical services to our members is at rates that would be less than you would find in the private sector just due to the power of the collective of how we are financed. As far as the staff, we have 12 full-time and 1 part-time persons working in our organization, collectively about 190 years worth of experience. I've been with the district, will be 23 years in May. A very seasoned staff that are there to provide assistance to our membership in whatever they need us to do. As far as what we do, most of you are aware that we specialize in put together applications, grant applications, loan applications. If those projects get funded for a water tower or a street or what have you, then there's a lot of red tape that gets associated with it. There's no free money. And we help get those I's dotted and T's crossed. Planning and research, that's what I spent most of my professional career with the district doing, is working in areas of zoning and nuisance and economic and community development, doing research and analysis on a wide variety of issues. We do some very specific technical specialties. Geographic information systems is very important to our organization. We have 3.5 individuals that work solely in GIS, and we have a relationship with the city for the last 12, 13 years regarding geographic information system technologies. Also within the umbrella of the First District, we have the Development Company, and the Development Company is a certified development company through the Small Business Administration. We have 4 employees in that area, and that organization partners with local lending providers, and we have our own funds in-house that we use to leverage projects for private business, new jobs, and expansion of existing jobs. Always comes back to, well, what are we getting for our dollar's worth of dues? And the easiest way to look at it is just the hard cash that comes in from outside sources, from state and federal dollars. Last year, was about a little under $250,000 was paid into dues into our organization. We were able to assist our members leverage about $21.8 million in grants and loans. Of that 21.8, 10.2 came in the area of just grants. Outside dollars that came in from the federal and the state. You know, it's not us, it's really our membership that is investing in themselves. We don't have the dollars in the closet, but we know where the closets are, and we just try to make those connections between our members and those funding entities. So if you can see, the return on investment in 2015 district-wide was about $42 for every dollar's worth of dues. Since 2008, since I've been the director, we've been averaging a little over $28 in return on investment. When we take a look at Coddington County just this last year, dues was about $46,000 with all the entities included. Grants and loans, about $7.3 million. of which $3.5 million was in the form of grants, a $77 return on investment, $26 over the course of the last 7-8 years. Watertown specifically last year, about $9,000 in dues is what the city pays our organization. We had one project that generated $18,000 in grants for the cities. If you take a look, just since 2008, about $2.1 million in grant dollars. So $2 was our return on investment last year, but we've been averaging about 33 a year over the last 7 or 8 years. The other thing I would just briefly talk about, our development company, we did actually do 2 loans in the city of Watertown last year, about $490,000 on total project cost of about $1.5 million. So that's just very cursory review of things that we do. I just wanted to briefly talk a little bit about some specific projects. On the other handout, you can see, I'm not going to go through the Cottington County and the smaller towns, but specifically just what are some things that we've done in Watertown over the course of the last year. You all know Luke Muller. He's here quite often, and actually he's here a little bit more for the next several weeks, maybe a month or so, working as the urban planner for the city. He's going to be working on a part-time basis to fill that gap until Shane finds a replacement for Jeff. But otherwise, Luke's always here on Tuesday mornings talking with staff and working as a conduit. Luke also is the zoning officer for Cottington County through our office, so it's really good to have that communication. So we attend those planning department staff meetings. We act as that conduit between the city and the county. We maintain a lot of GIS data, the database. We assign addresses here in Watertown. We host a website for individual staff and the public to access GIS database. We did the grant last year for warning sirens, which was $18,300. We did apply for a solid waste grant application, but that one wasn't funded last year. Last year, I think really a big thing that was probably a year and a half in the making was the development of the joint jurisdiction zoning ordinance between the city and the county. That was completed about this time, it was last summer, but we had started it over a year ago. And currently, for about the last year and a half, we've been working on updating the comprehensive land use plan for the city. And I think once Luke finishes his work as the urban planner here over the next few weeks, we'll have that project wrapped up before the 4th of July is our anticipation. So again, we just appreciate the working relationship that we've had with the city and the staff and your leadership. And we look forward to another successful year. And I'd be more than glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Todd. If anybody has any questions for Todd, you're sure welcome to address it. I just want to up front say how easy it is to work with First District. And like you say with Luke here, every week on Tuesdays, and letting us know what's going on in the county, what's kind of close to Watertown, and what's going on. It's very beneficial for us.
And I just should also just basically say, since Craig's here too, and he sits on my board, we've always had a great working relationship with the Development Corporation and doing pet projects for them. And one thing that Craig didn't talk about recently is an outreach project with the Development Corporation that had nothing to do with money, but Craig's time working with the town of Bryant and in creating a tax increment financing district for a project for them to expand. So a shout out for that organization as well.
Todd, what do you see for the grant environment going forward?
Well, it's kind of funny. When I started in 1993, and at that time I was principally a grant writer for the first couple years of my career, we felt that if we didn't get 65 to 70% of a project funded with federal or state grant dollars, we weren't doing our job. I think today if we hit 50%, we hit a homer. Right now, we generally aim 35 to 45% in grant sources if the project's right. The good thing is there's pretty adequate dollars for water and sewer projects. Street projects are always a hard thing to finance. Public buildings, again, are very difficult to finance anymore. Fire departments, emergency service centers, there are dollars out there for that. But it's getting more and more difficult to find dollars to track down specific projects. So we have to start thinking about doing it our own. I think the city does a very good job with their capital improvement planning process. It's something that we try to instill and encourage our other smaller communities to do because you have to have those sinking funds set up for rainy days. Well, thank you.
Anybody else?
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Todd. We really appreciate it. And did you get anybody hired for that position yet?
Well, actually today, the application deadline closed. We're going to be hiring a new office manager in our office. So that 190 years worth of experience just went to 150 because
There you go.
Jan's been with us for 42 years. So.
Say, Todd, maybe you mention where is your office?
Oh, yes, very good. Well, that's one of the things. We kind of fly below the radar in most situations, and we kind of like it that way. But we're located right across the street from the fire department in the old Barclay building. We've been there since the middle 80s.
Perfect. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.
Get out.
So Julie, nothing like being on the job for a month or two and then have to come up here and no pressure.
3 months and 21 days.
21 days?
Yep.
We're excited to have you here.
Well, thanks. I'm gonna let you, I don't know how easy all this is to see because I can't tell you.
Well, great. Well, if you will just introduce yourself and we'll let you do your thing.
My name is Julie Knudsen. I am the new Executive Director of the Watertown Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I have to say it's really a lot of fun to be here in front of all of you and not be talking about potholes. Okay. Yeah, you took a long
Thanks,
time, so
Todd.
we don't want you to start over. I'm kidding. I know, I'm just teasing you. All right. Mine's not as fancy as theirs. Where am I? Computer. There we go. Oh, we lost the color, but that's okay. Okay, I guess 2015, I came on January 1st of 2016, but I was on the board of the CVB for about 2.5 years. So a little bit of this I was in on. Retrieving some of the numbers was a little challenging, but I'll just bear with me here. 2015, where did that go? Oh, we're just gonna go down. Why won't that do that, Craig? Beginning right here. There we go. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, 2015, the income for the Watertown Convention and Visitors Bureau, the City of Watertown contributed $251,500, and the Watertown Business Improvement District contributed $16,500, so our total budget going into 2015 was $268,000. Our actual budget, where we ended up, was $232,027. And obviously, the major drivers and the difference there were the payroll benefits and taxes, and some of the advertising commitments that had been anticipated. The executive director, of course, retired in August of 2015, so that's where the difference came there. Last year, the BBB tax saw a 6.27% increase with an income of $708,217. So we did have a really strong year. I think our increase was higher than the state of South Dakota's increase, so that was just slightly. Of that $807,000, we did host 119,734 hotel overnights. Just off the top of my head, average cost of that. So we roll into a pretty large number of revenue that came in. The BBB tax got 1% of that, which was $101,000 of the 807. The other tax came from the gas and food and all of the other. So just the hotel stays. I didn't have, as far as the people count, that's hard, but we know how many people stayed overnight. So one of the biggest expenditures, I know 2 years ago when I was on the CVB board, I came to the council when we were going to spend the $45,000 on the new website. And a lot of what we're doing now is including accountability for our spending, and with all of the social media and all of those types of things, it's really easy to see where those numbers are increasing. 2015 was the first total, complete year that website was up and running. I think we got it going in March of last year. And so it wasn't a whole year, but we do spend $20,000 a year to keep up the website, and also adding some bells and whistles along the way that we maybe need to add to make it more efficient. So we've got Google Analytics that tells us a little bit about that. We had 59.43% new users, 515,000 views. So I think for being up less than a year, I think that's pretty impressive. 2015, our website had over 297 sessions. The Bramble Park Zoo was in the top 3 page view of each month of the year. And when you look at some of those statistics, the visitors to the Bramble Park Zoo was a record 70,000 visitors last year. The family was our major focus last year for our peak season marketing campaign. And so we did see that there was some success with reaching those families, and the hits to the zoo page and the zoo site, the pictures and the page views were very high for that. Our prime markets last year were Winnipeg, St. Cloud, Fargo, Brainerd, Alexandria, Wilmer, and Grand Forks. And when you take a look at these 2 pages, and then we have secondary markets, of course, of all the states: South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, North Dakota, and Nebraska. All of the 25 followed our 2015 marketing plan that we co-opted with the state of South Dakota, which we've done every year for many, many years. We did pull some visitors in from Louisville and Kansas City and Chicago, and Kansas City and Chicago have proven, as we're doing some of our peak season plotting for 2016, that those are pretty strong markets for us. So we're going to change things up a little bit though this year. As far as, I don't have really what the mindset was in going into all the marketing. I know that a lot of it had been a lot of the same types of things for a long time. What we have going, this is a real small list of some of the new things that we have going on. Partnering with all of the entities in Watertown, Art Walk, the Chamber of Commerce, different events and sponsorships that they already have going on. Our peak season marketing campaign is going to target the bucket lister for the first time. We're really excited about that because they spend money 12 months out of the year instead of the families that spend it 3 months out of the year. So we've got some pretty exciting things going on there. Partnerships and servicing, creating and growing new events with the Watertown Event Center. I think that there's just a lot of relationship building going on and teamwork going on right now, so we're really excited about that. And I think 2016 is going to be an exceptional year for the CVB. So I don't know if you have any questions. We appreciate your support and encouragement, and if you haven't been to the State Tourism Convention, I would highly recommend that as a council member you take that in just so you can kind of get the dollars and cents of what the visitor is all about, because from a sustainability standpoint, the visitor is very important to our community.
And that is exciting to go there. I mean, to all the people that are pumped up to get folks here to Watertown, and kind of what different cities are doing. You can talk to them, and you can see what the state is doing. And Julie, we're really excited to see kind of that new feeling of excitement going to go on there. So I'm going to open it up for questions for you if anybody has
Try
any.
not to stump me too much.
No, they'll be nice.
Julie, welcome aboard for one thing. At the very
Thank
first,
you.
just like Steve said, we're excited to see some new blood in there, and not to badmouth Karen. I mean, that's just, every now and then you just need
You know,
Reinvigorate
everybody does
everything.
things differently, and bless her heart, she was here for 16 years,
Yep.
and she's the reason why I was interested in the CVB to begin with. Is
You
she,
betcha.
She brought me onto the board, so
One thing that's always been kind of a thorn in my side for many, many years, and maybe it's unfair to ask you this question, being you're so new in the job, but
I'll try.
okay. Do you have any future plans or changes to try to promote, to me, which is one of our biggest assets,
How
is
much time do we have?
Lake Compesca?
Lake Compesca. Actually, for our 2016 marketing campaign, and I mean, there's just so much going on to even put it in there was going to be probably too much. But we're going to have all new video and all new photography done this year for Watertown. It's well overdue, so we did put that into our co-op budget for this year. Lake Compesca, the golf courses, all of the things that have kind of been left out before. We're going to
Yep.
make a big long list, and we're going to work really hard to have that be as complete as possible.
Yep. To me, that's the biggest thing that makes Watertown a destination, and I think over the last 20 years, we've kind of forgotten about that. So that's great to hear. Thank you.
Yes.
Julie, we have the new softball fields coming. What's the plan to get them going? Because we've heard all along they're state-of-the-art fields, so that certainly has to be a big draw for Watertown. then.
Well, and it will be, I guess, with that and with the new multipurpose center, I plan to meet with all of the folks that are pertinent to both of those things so that I can get, all of the information that I need to market that. We'll get it on our website, and there's different things that we can be doing. There's symposiums, sports symposiums. I talked to some of the folks at the rec center and even Steve Moore about maybe we send some people from Watertown to some of these symposiums. And I'm kind of approaching those kind of things a little bit differently, where we're kind of signing on some of the attractions and some of the people that are, their business is sports, and let them come along because, they can talk the talk, and I can go there as the CVB, but they're the experts. And so we're going to take some folks along to some of our shows that can really be dynamic and talk and speak well about Watertown. And that way we have a little bit more of a flexibility, and we can get more places and do more shows and maybe bring the bid board into funding a few of those things. So
I know you're going to be heading to Minneapolis here shortly.
yes.
You just came back from one not too long ago, didn't you?
I was in Sioux Falls week before last. That was the same weekend as the basketball tournament, so I was double booked that weekend, and then I was in Kansas City in February. So it's been busy, and we're going to try and take in some shows that we've never done before. I know that there's some of the markets that do, go after just different types of shows rather than the hunting and fishing, which is primarily what we've been doing. So we're going to offer some opportunities to some of the attraction folks and the hoteliers. And, if any of you guys want to sign up, you guys can go represent us at a show here or there.
Maybe it's a little bit premature to think this way, but maybe not. You go into a lot of the bigger cities and they can afford to do that, but, they have a athletic commission, or not, maybe, I guess commission isn't the word I'm looking for, but, I think it's time we probably look at some of that with some of the new projects that we got coming along with the ice and the softball and the new multi-purpose facility. And I'm not talking spending a lot of money on it, but I think it's time we put together a committee and start looking at some of that. So, and those people that Julie were talking about are definitely the ones that need to head that up. So.
Well, and if you, I guess when you talk about money and the mayor knows that I'm not afraid to come to you folks if I'll do my diligence, but if I really believe that we need something at the CVB, I'm going to come and ask you to help us with that. But when you look at the return on investment for the visitor, if we do it right, we can afford to spend some money on it, and it's well worth it. So that's some of the best revenue we'll get.
Anybody else got any questions for Julie? Well, thanks, Julie.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it turned out great. We do
Well-
appreciate you stopping down here and
Sure.
giving us a little update of what's going on. And
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, now it's the Shane Show.
Thank you. It's a little easier to look at all of you together when I'm sitting over here, so. Two-way street, isn't it? So. Let's see. Somehow. There you go.
This is on the council meeting tonight, isn't it? We're gonna probably just do a little talking about it so that it won't take so much this evening. This one and the pavement management study also, am I correct?
Yes.
Good.
Somehow the
I'm just trying to help you kill some time. here.
PDF I had opened is
I
no
got your back,
longer
man.
open. Well, here's one of them. I'll talk about this one first. The drawing in front of you is our mill and overlay and proposal for 2016. You can see it has segments all over town. We have some in the north central area. We have some out in the far west. This is an important corridor street over here by some of Terex's facilities. We have some core areas in the downtown, or I call it the greater downtown area, but in the residential area adjacent to downtown. Bruin Avenue up here is a piece that needs some attention. We have a section out here by Terry Redland that's really needs some attention as well. So we've got our overlays scattered out throughout the community. We do have some smaller segments, alleys that we're in need. But what I want to particularly bring your attention to that's unique and new this year is this light blue piece is a portion of First Avenue starting at 3rd Street West and ending at Highway 81. That is our proposed microsurfacing project for this year. And with that, I'll kind of show you a little bit via some pictures of what microsurfacing is. And it's kind of fits between two categories. You know, you're used to our normal chip seal projects where we spray oil on the ground and then spread rock over it and then knead that together with rollers. This is a little bit of a hybrid between that chip seal project and our traditional mill and overlay project. So basically what they do is they use emulsified asphalt, which is similar oil to the chip seal, except that it's got some additives in it, and then it's actually mixed together with the aggregate in a pug mill on the machine, and then it's distributed as a very thin layer. And here you can see this is behind the paving machine, another shot behind the paving machine that lays that down really thin. And this picture here shows you about how thin that mat of asphalt material is. And the unique properties of a micro seal is that the oil and stuff this is made of actually penetrates the surface of the material that it's being sprayed on. And here's a better example. This is nice and sealed over here where the micro seal has been applied, and this is the old porous surface right adjacent to it. And you can see here that all of the asphalt that was originally on this surface has been bled off or scraped off by wear, and you can actually see the individual rocks. And this is the purpose of the micro seal, is to rejuvenate the surface. Yes, Don?
What happens when you plow one versus the other?
Well, the traditional chip seal, the rocks are a little bit more exposed on the surface, and they can be a little bit tougher on the cutting edges of the snowplows. So this should be a little bit more friendly on the snowplow. And primarily, we're gonna use these type of surfaces initially on our primary minor collector routes, such as First Avenue, Camp, and all of our quarter-mile roads is where we wanna try them first. And then if we see a lot of success there, then we'll start to experiment with those in the residential areas. But for now, we wanna kinda, because it's a little bit more expensive operation, we'll go into it slowly, and on higher use roads for now. One of the unique things about microsurfacing is you actually have to take all of any pavement striping that you have out on the road surface. You strip that off by sandblasting or milling it slightly to, otherwise that bleeds through. This is such a thin application that those lines will actually somewhat reflect through the surface, or if it's new enough paint, it actually is adverse to the adherence and penetration of this material into the surface below it. So that's one thing that you'll see when we get ready for this this operation, is that they'll be out there grinding those stripes off or getting rid of the pavement stripes. And then we've got to, of course, reapply the striping over the top of this surface when we're done, and that's just a matter of procedure. So
And Shane, we're not able to do any of that work with our staff.
this is very, very highly technical construction. In fact, the closest contractor to our region is in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And just to give you an idea how far-reaching and for competition these projects are, the current contractor that's hired to do the work of this nature in Sioux Falls for this summer is from Arizona or Utah. I can't remember which, but one of the other bidders is from the Kansas City, Missouri area. So this is highly unique, and it's very few contractors involved in this type of construction at this point. And the city of Sioux Falls has had great success with it, and so we thought we would give it a try and see how it works for our operations. Ideally, this is gonna give us 7 or 10 years of more life on a street surface. So, I mean, let's hope that we get those kind of results. But you can see, I mean, these look like brand new roads basically when they're done.
You still need to do the crack sealing prior, do you not?
Yes, yep. And that's because this is surface. It's kind of like painting your walls. That oil impregnates those little ones, but it doesn't have the structure to bridge the inch gaps, like for crack sealing. So, but and you can see a couple of these pictures when I talk about, see how they deliberately went next to the stripe. They didn't actually go over striping. You can see that see how they stopped on either side of some arrows that they wanted to pave. So there's different techniques that people try to do. We're not going to get that fancy here. We're going to just try to, like this one here is paving alongside the stripe rather than over the stripe. But we're just going to pave over ours and remove the stripes and repaint them. We're not going to get too crazy on trying to preserve a little piece. But so this is unique. We'll try it. We'll learn from it. We'll adapt and kind of go forward.
Well, Shane, if this is successful for us, don't we, with the real lack of vendors, for lack of a better term, or contractors that can do this, do we kind of paint ourselves in a corner about potentially not having one if we go to a more expanded use of this?
Potentially, but one advantage we have, or at least we feel that we have and want to try to take advantage of, is the fact that the cities of Sioux Falls, Brandon, and several of the other surrounding communities now there down around the Sioux Falls area are doing these on an annual basis. And I would suspect at some point the Brookingses and Mitchells and others will probably follow suit. And if we get to where we have a regional project, these guys are gonna come in and they're gonna beat each other up pretty bad on giving us good prices. And then they're gonna come into a region and do the whole thing. So they're gonna do Sioux Falls, they're gonna do Watertown, all in one period of time and not have to do that. Now, the way we're setting these up is we will bid these as individual projects. If we don't get favorable bids one year, we'll just won't make an award and we'll wait and do a different project.
So when you
another
look at the
time.
cost of doing this, I'm sure the cost is higher. What do you figure out, I mean, when you put down the chips and you take them off and you do all this stuff, how does that cost actually work out, do you know?
We're probably getting chip seals for, is Rob here? Yeah. So it's about $1 a square yard difference. We're getting chip seals traditionally for in that $1.25 range, and this is at least estimated at this time as $2.25.
Does that count our labor of coming in and sweeping it up and getting rid of it and all that? Because that's an expense there also that you're
It does
seeing.
not. So they're closer together than that if you took in consideration.
Yeah, that's probably
that
two of the,
labor, but-
two of the roughest things on your equipment is the blades, like
Right,
Shane said, and
right.
then, of course, on your sweepers, when they're picking up that chip seal, that's very, very tough on them, so.
And I would guess that the more it's being used in this area, the more that you'll have other people getting into the business, would you not?
Correct. Yeah, I've, of course, prodded our local asphalt company to see if they would ever be interested in it. And of course, they aren't at this point, but if it became a ongoing revenue stream for them, I would think they would certainly look at it. Any other questions on microsurfacing? Let's see if I can get my other one to open up.
Hey Shane, have we talked about bike trails at all? Would this be something we'd consider for that as well? I don't know, maybe they don't make equipment that would do that.
Potentially, I mean, we talk about what resurfacing should be done with bike trails, and right now the recommended is a fog seal, which is a lower technological thing than this. I mean, these are meant for heavier traffic, but a fog seal is similar to this, and that's what we'll entertain with our bike trails as we go forward for maintenance. So they probably wouldn't really apply to a bike trail directly, but certainly the technology's in that same genre, so. One of the other things that you're gonna see later in the regular council meeting is, we've been in negotiations or discussions with our contractor for our pavement management system, and one of the elements of that we always thought we would need to address is doing cores. And we were under the understanding when we entered the agreement through the state contract that the city would have to buy a coring machine and hire somebody to go around and take cores throughout segments of our pavement system for evaluation as part of that pavement management data gathering. And subsequently, we've had discussions with our company that we hired to ultimately do the study and discuss that they would be able to do a subsurface stress investigation using a Dynaflect, it's called, but basically they go along and they thump the road with something, and then they measure how the sound reflects back to the unit. And what they can do is tell you how strong the pavement is and what the underlying subgrade will also withstand. And I don't know all the technological pieces of that, but that can all be done in lieu of taking all these individual cores, which we would have had to supply information to the company, and then they would have had to incorporate it into their program and all that. Well, if we have them do it directly through this other alternate method, that would alleviate us from having to buy a piece of equipment and hire a person to operate it, of course. Ultimately, they quoted us $29,822 to do this work,
Right.
deflection testing work.
You know, this is something that we've been looking at, and I'm gonna just break in. Welcome, Beth. Welcome back. Good to see ya. This is something that we've been looking at for a couple, 2-3 years almost now, to have a pavement management system. I know that Sarah was very involved in this early on, and I'm glad to see us moving forward with this. You know, our roads are so expensive to fix and replace.
Yeah, so I think this is I'm gonna ask permission to amend our agreement with this company to include this $29,800 tonight. And we think it's a cost value that will get easily offset from what our original plan was. And you'll see in the memo that we prepared for tonight's meeting, the specific dollars and the advantage that we see that this will do for us rather than do the traditional pavement course. But if there's any questions on this item, I certainly would answer them. Otherwise, you know, I just wanted you to have some more background of why you're seeing an amendment. And we do have some grant dollars from the state, room in our contract there to include a portion of this at the 80-20 split, and that's also shown on that memo on this council item. So it's good news. I think we should take advantage of that.
Shane, are you gonna use the Dynaflex on every road in all city streets or just segments of?
This one says for $30,000, I can get it on all streets. I think I would start with all streets this year, and then in subsequent years, when we do some other testing, maybe we wouldn't do all of the streets. But we need a good baseline for our pavement management system, and I'd be remiss to omit something that might be important.
Well, if you do all streets this year, it's gonna kinda give you a basic plan of where you're gonna have to, well, you know, this one's good this year, but we should check it again in another 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years,
Yeah,
whichever,
I
yeah.
think we're gonna look at updating this payments management system about every 5 years, so I think it's important.
What's interesting is that if you look in the past, not that it was wrong, but it was just kind of a drive-by, and they would just look at the roads and say, yeah, this one needs fixing, and yeah, this one needs it. Where this is gonna give you some real data
Right.
that Mike is gonna like, and he'll probably want a whole report on that thing,
Well,
on every road.
You know,
Am I-
unfortunately, the way, and not just the community of Watertown, but throughout the region, we tend to be pothole chasers. We fix roads after the potholes develop. Hopefully, through pavement management systems, we identify those before they become potholes and can fix them sooner and make things last longer, so.
Shane, have we talked to any people, any communities that have done this? I'm not sure how new this technology is, but, you know, have we done that kind of homework to know that this is a competent and viable option for us in lieu of the core samples?
Yes, I would say that without a doubt. The state of South Dakota uses this type of pavement management assessment. I'm sure that Minnehaha County and the city of Sioux Falls did that as well, because their road systems are so enormous that what you could do this for in a week or two's time would take you a month or more for us to go out and core, so.
I
Time
just would
savings.
add, the state has done that. They've got their own van
Correct.
South Dakota DOT is a leader on this. They've developed a lot of the technology they do, and they've driven every state highway in the system, and they grade the highways, and they have substantial cost savings on knowing where to invest and when, and quite frankly, when not to invest. If there's a highway that's in such bad shape, then right, the pothole chasing, you might tend to fix it. There's times you just let it go and then get it out for total replacement. So, money well spent.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. I mean, that's exactly it.
Just out of curiosity, Shane, do you back this up ever? Do they audit any of these results with an actual core sample just to see how it stacks up compared to that? Especially if you had a road, like I read through this information it would tell you that you probably need to replace the whole
Right.
surface or a major reconstruction.
We may do some of that if we feel something doesn't add up. In other words, if we look at their data and their data says this thing's a cobblestone road, but yet when you walk it, if it looks better, we may have to do some coring on occasion. I'm fearing that it'll be just the opposite. Some roads that we thought were pretty good shape, we'll probably find that aren't up to par and will need more aggressive treatments. That's what this whole program is designed to ferret out, those kind of issues. So we're still learning about it, and we'll continue to learn and hopefully have results to use for this coming budget cycle is what I'm hoping.
How does our water table affect the results of this testing? Because some years it can be high and you got bad, you got
Correct.
water seeping
Yep.
out.
We
Other
do have-
years dry out and.
Yep. We want it to be, we don't want the soil to be at the saturated time of year. So in other words, we wouldn't even attempt that right now because of the frost is kind of sporadic throughout our street system yet. We're probably looking at the first part of June or something, depending on spring moisture for this type of work.
And Shane, you are putting in drain tile on streets, new streets that are in kind of those areas that are
We-
susceptible to wet.
We have one project that's gonna have tile this summer, and that's 15th Street up by the new rec center. And we'll kind of wait and see what this system does, but where we do have water table issues, that will always be a consideration in our street system. So, does
Yeah, 'cause
anybody
that-
want me to?
That's a cheap fix. I think we're gonna call it, and if there'll be more
Alright.
questions, they might think about that this evening, and
Okay.
when you bring it on the council agenda, they will,
Very
they'll
good.
probably have them for you. Okay, folks, well, thank you very much. Again, Julie and Craig, thank you. I know Todd left, but at this time, I will adjourn the meeting. We'll be back at 7 o'clock.